evaluating quality, and speed reading. So let's go over what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to first go over the parts of the academic article. Well, actually, first I'll show you really more about finding the academic article, and then what parts you should read, how to speed read it, evaluating the methodology, and figuring out if the author is credible or important, using the article to develop a topic and find more research. So this will help you when you're working on class projects, and it will help you when you're working on your dissertation to help you with that. So the first thing then, like I said, I wanted to show you is finding an academic article. So the first place you should always go is the City Library. And this is this is the main search bar, and it will search all of the databases. I know oftentimes people are told, hey, go to the databases link here, and then you can find the database for your particular field, whether it be organizational leadership, K-12, teaching, business, computer science, whatever your field is. There's a journal probably that works in that field. But really, you don't have to go to all that trouble. You can just search for it right here. So what I searched for is gamification and organizational training. And I got this list, and you always want to narrow it down by full text, scholarly and peer-reviewed, and then journal article. And you'll know that you won't be finding anything else that might be coming up in the results. You'll have a very specific amount of articles that you can find. Now you can see we only found 22, which means, this is obviously a very small, people have not done a lot of research in this area, at least according to what we see in the library. One thing to note is you can also filter the findings by fields. You can filter it by years. So it gives you a lot of choices when it comes to that. So then you can see what is listed here, and if you find an article that you like, then you could click on that article and you go to the article page. Now here's something I want to point out to everyone. The article page will typically have full text and then full text PDF. In full text, you'll be able to go down and you'll be able to see the article as it was an HTML web page. It's pretty great at presenting the information in a very easy way to read through and digest, because you have just this middle column here. However, it's important to note a very important thing, which is why I always tell students to go to the full PDF, because if you do, what you're going to find is the PDF is better formatted, the abstract is broken down, and if you go further into the paper, eventually you're going to get to a point where you have a table, and then you also have down here a little further a figure. Neither of these is available on the HTML page, so therefore you really don't want to ignore looking at the PDF itself. You'll also want to download and save the PDF. If you're not already using a citation manager, you should be using one. There are free ones like Zotero or Mendeley or EndNote, which you pay for. And they save the journal articles and allow you to put notes on them. And even if the note is, this article really doesn't pertain to my topic, that's an important note, because months down the road, you may come across that exact same article again. And if you do, you'll know that it isn't worth reading it again. Your goal should never be to read an academic journal article more than once. You want to be able to take good notes on that article. What I used to do is use my iPad reader to select and copy and paste whole paragraphs from the academic journals into the notes in my Zotero. What that created then was a database that I could search through of all the information that I had read that I thought was important. So for example, if down the road I wanted to learn about, if down the road in my writing suddenly I realized, oh my goodness, I need something about ethics. Oh, I remember reading an article about ethics a year ago. Let me see if I saved it. So I go in, I search through the notes for ethics, and sure enough, I not only find the article, but the relevant, important points from the article that I had copy and pasted into the citation manager. So that really helped me to be able to instantly find what I needed to back up what I was doing in my paper. So you have this information here. Another choice that you have for finding information is using Google Scholar, and let me talk about that for a little bit. So Google Scholar is a special website that is devoted to academic articles, but it has more than that. It has patents. It has other things as well. Hold on just a second. Let me go back here. Okay. It has a whole bunch of other things as well. The hold on. I'm very sorry. I'm going to pause for a second. Okay, sorry about that brief pause. So what I was saying is when you search for the term here in Google Scholar, it is going to bring up academic articles, but it will also include sometimes web articles or legal documents, patents, other things like that. So you may not always get an academic article. As a matter of fact, when I clicked on some of these to look at them, they were pre-published papers that have just been uploaded to researchgate.net. They weren't actually published in a journal. So you got to be careful about that to make sure that when you're looking at something, it's actually been published in a journal and it's not somebody's publishing their writing just for people to read if they're interested. There's nothing wrong with that, but you want to make sure that the work you're getting is peer-reviewed. Thing about Google Scholar is not only when you go there and you see all these articles, you want to make sure you see the little PDF symbol over here to the right. That's going to tell you that you can download a copy of that article as a PDF or an HTML. Sometimes it would be an HTML that you can download, and then you'll just have to copy it some way. But the other great thing is you can go into your profile, go into your settings, go to library links, and you can actually link to City University's library. What that does is it allows you to see if you can find a copy of the article at CityU. So that is another option for you to use. One of the main reasons I enjoy using Google Scholar is because you can use Google Scholar to determine the relevance of an article that you're reading. If you look at the number of people who cited it and compare that to the year it was put out, you can see if the article has been thought of as being important by other people because they've used it in their research. Cited by means someone else used this article in their research and cited this author's work. And you can see since 2018, 115 people have done that. Whereas you go further down here, and there's another one from 2018, but only 27 people have cited that. So you can see, comparing those together, that this is obviously a more important article. Now, this one only has 20 citations, but it came out in 2020, so it's barely been out for a year, a little bit over a year. So you may start seeing people citing this coming up because it takes about 2 years to get a journal article published. So, but you can see this one has 60 people already. So obviously, you know, it's a really good way to see how important an article is. This one from 2011 has 363. So you can see that this is considered an important article for the field. You have to judge whether the article works for your topic and what you're looking at yourself, but seeing these cited by can really help. Another thing that you can do is to get some depth on a subject. So if I read this article and I said, this is exactly what I'm looking for, I can click on this related articles button and it will show me articles that are related to that article, either by the same author or by this on the same topic. This can be a great place to go and get more information on your ideas because you'll find articles that are somewhat connected in one way or another to the article that you thought was a really good article. You can see here's an example of you can only get this one at CityU. There is no PDF link for that. So you can see how that looks when you get that happening. The other thing that you have on Google Scholar, just like you do on databases, is you have this Cite button. And the Cite button will give you different examples of the citation in different formats. You can see here that there's an APA one. You can't forget, however, the term garbage in, garbage out. Not everybody puts this information in correctly. For example, some people put all caps for the title of the journal. Well, the software will just pull out the parts that it thinks needs to be where they need to be, and it'll format it the way it thinks it needs to be formatted. But if something's put in all caps, if somebody's first name is put in wrong, in the wrong field, or in the wrong place, you will get a messed up citation generation. So you want to make sure that you're always checking that to your APA manual to be doubly sure that the citation is correct. This is a great jumping off point, but don't believe 100% it's going to be right every time. A lot of these generators, especially ones that are in the actual journals themselves, they are sometimes out of date. So they may not be up to date with APA 7th edition. So you can see this one is APA 7th edition. It includes the DOI number, which is important in APA 7.0. Every journal should have a DOI number at the end of it. And this is, of course, formatted correctly by APA 7. So you would have that. They also have APA 6th edition. We're not using 6th edition, so always be sure to look for the proper edition, the 7th edition, which is what we're using now. Okay, so that's how to find an article. Let's talk about the articles themselves. Academic articles are fairly similar in their structure. They're all structured in a very similar way. It's also similar to what you're going to do with your dissertation, because the dissertation will have some of these same sections in them as well. An academic article is really more of a research that has been done that's more condensed. A dissertation is a student project, which is why you don't use dissertations in your to back up your work for an academic source, because they're really not academic, they're student projects. But they do follow this recipe, and you can take the information from a dissertation and shrink it down to fit an academic journal article and get it published, which should be everyone's goal, because it gets your name out there, and it also gets the work out there so people could use it and could cite it in their work. The main thing about a journal article that makes it different than a book or a website or a magazine is that an academic journal article use peer review, which means people who are at the same level as the author in the field look at the author's work and determine if in the field of whatever it is, whether it be organizational leadership, computer science, whatever, in that field, these people who are experts in that field have read this person's work and feel like it contributes to the field and should be published. That's what peer review means, and you only get that in peer-reviewed journal articles. You don't get that on a magazine, which may have one editor, or a textbook, which may have one editor. You just don't get that same level of critique. So that's something important to understand and think about. So the parts of the journal article are going to be the abstract, literature review, the methodology, the results, the discussion, and the references. Now, discussion can also be conclusion, results could also be findings. Those terminology can change. You can also find articles which don't have a methodology section. And what does that mean? Well, typically that means that they've done a review of literature, which means they've gone through a lot of different journal articles, and they're presenting the information they found in those journal articles in a way to make a point that they think is important, or just to collect them all together in one document for people in the field to use. Now, that's fine, but that's really not a research article, and you can use reviews of literature. Just keep in mind that there's no methodology, there's nothing they've done. Now, contrary to that, though, you can use a methodology to review a whole bunch of academic journal articles and create some kind of methodological analysis of what you found. And so that does happen, and that is a research article, because a research journal article, because they are actually manipulating the data they found to form some new image or new idea from that data. The important things when you're reading the article is to read the abstract first, then to go into the literature review, methodology, skim that. Results I tend to skip, and then discussion is where you dig in and look at it really closely. Because discussion is going to be, what is the new information that's being presented here that didn't exist before? So in your career, in your doctoral career, and in your, especially for your dissertation, you're going to read hundreds of journal articles. You could even, some dissertations have 200 to 300 journal articles listed as references. So you want to be able to read through these articles really fast and get the information that you need in order to complete whatever you're trying to do, whether it be a paper for class or whether it be a lit review for your dissertation. So you want to be able to learn to go through an article quickly and kind of speed read through it. The way you do that is you always first read the abstract. A good abstract should tell you what the purpose of the study is, what the methodology was used, what the findings are, and why those findings are significant. That should all be in the abstract. Remember, academic writing is not creative writing, so we don't want to hide something or build tension or excite people with the results at the end of the article. In academic work, it's very much right up front in the very first thing that you see. They're going to give you all the information that you need to know about the article. That in and of itself is often enough for you to say, okay, this is something I want to use or something I don't want to use. However, still reviewing the literature review, if the article is in your field, if it's related to your topic, you should always still review the literature review, because you might find some good articles that could actually be good for whatever you're doing, your paper or your dissertation. And so I read the abstract, and then I read the first sentence of each paragraph in the lit review. Now, the reason you do that is because a well-written academic article, the topic sentence of every paragraph should tell you exactly what is going to be in that paragraph. When you're writing your work, it should be the same. I should be able to read the first sentence of every paragraph you have and know what it is you're discussing. Now, maybe some of the first sentences introduce concept or ideas that I don't know enough about to skip through it. So that would be a paragraph I would read in more detail. Or it might be something I marked to come back and read later once I have gone through and read the article quickly. So remember, when you're writing, especially a longer paper like a lit review, you should be able to copy and paste every first sentence into a document in a list and know exactly, the reader should be able to see that list of first sentences and know exactly what you talked about and the order that you talked about it in and why that order was important. Why did you talk about this first and this second? Or why did you talk about this here when you talk about something else related down here? It gives you logic to your paper, and you can see that the logic is off by using those first sentences to look through that. After you've run through the literature review, then you want to skim the methodology section, and you just want to pick up the important points. What was the method? What was the context? And we'll go into more about that in just a second. And then you want to read the discussion, because that's where the new information is. And then you go back at the end and read anything you want to know more about. One of the great things about the discussion is all discussions usually have implications for future research or future research recommendations. And those are great because if the article is fairly new and they're recommending something be done in research, that's something you could do for your dissertation, because probably no one else has done it yet. If the article is really old, it's very likely someone else has already done it, but maybe they haven't. It's good to review that information anyway. So when you're evaluating the methodology, you just want to think about really quickly, what did they do, quant or qual? How many participants did they use? Where was the study done? Could this study be applied in another context? And could you repeat the study based on what you read in the methods section? Methodology should be descriptive enough that anybody picking up that paper can replicate that author's findings. Replication of findings is important. In the harder sciences, they do it all the time as part of the peer review process. Different people try to make the same thing happen that these other people made happen in the laboratory. And if they can repeat the study, it validates the original idea in the original study. In social sciences, it's more along the lines of you want to be able to know that if you wanted to do this study again, you could, maybe in a different context. And that goes back to where was the study done, because there are some studies that really can't be transferable to your context. If a study was done, say, in Vietnam, or a study was done in India, or a study was done in China, there are different cultural systems going on there, and therefore it may not be transferable to the cultural systems we have in the U.S. You have to make that evaluation yourself based on on what you have read in the article. So just remember, don't just pull an article that's an international article and say, okay, well, this says the words that I want to use in my paper, so I'm just going to pull it. Because if the whole paper in itself, if the culture and the context doesn't really match, then you're really pulling information out that really doesn't apply to what you're talking about. So understand where the study was done and how transferable or generalizable, if it's quantitative, it could be for your context and your study. Okay, so now I'm just going to go through an academic journal article really quickly, just to kind of show you what I look for and just demonstrate what we've talked about. So you can see here the abstract is broken down. We have purpose, we have design and methodology and approach, we have findings, limitations, implications, originality and value, keywords. This is a great abstract, and a lot of journals use this method of breaking it down this way so they make sure it covers everything it's supposed to. You're not always going to find it that easily divvied up, but that you should see all of these things in the abstract. You can see here that they looked at 32 people, so we'll go into that more later and see what that means. So now I'm going to just go through and just show you some ideas of what we may find from reading the first sentence. So in this introduction, sometimes it's an introduction and then a literature review, and sometimes it's just the introduction, which is the literature review. So you may not always see a separate literature review, but you will see one or the other, if not both. So we constantly strive with new technology to see how it may enable us to improve how we've done things up until now, and not by its new unique characteristics and potential. Okay, so he's going to talk about new technology and a different kind of take on it. Then we go down. This is a very long paragraph. You should probably never have a paragraph this long. Then we go to another section. Until recently, video and DVD dominated the presentation of modeling of desired behaviors in management training. So we now know that this is going to talk about videos and DVDs and their presentation of modeling in management training. So that's what this paragraph is going to be. In spite of the general agreement regarding its effectiveness in training, there are significant drawbacks to the use of videos. All right, so now I'm sure I'm going to see a presentation of why this is a drawback. Alternatives to DVDs may include the concept of gamification. Okay, now we're going to learn about gamification. The concept of presence is also studied in immersive spaces and typically experienced in virtual worlds. So we should see stuff about virtual worlds, but this is kind of a really short paragraph, so I'm not sure how deep the author is going to go into that. Then we talk about here, a machinima is an alternative to DVD, offers presumed advantages. So I'm not sure what that word is. I'm probably not even pronouncing it right. And so I would want to read through this paragraph to learn more about what that is. The author should explain this because this is a term that is not common in the vernacular of a lot of people. It may be specialized, it may be common in a certain field, but it's not common to me. So I'm hoping that I'm going to read about it and it's going to tell me about that. So I'd probably read this whole paragraph. And then there's considerable support for some of the reservations for the use of virtual environments. So now we're going to see some of these reservations be presented. And then we jump down into our research question. So this is the research question that this author is looking at. And then there are sub-questions that they're breaking down on what they're expecting to find. So this is not typically done. You normally don't see these statements, subjects will report. You really don't see that. These are more like what the author's planning to do. So interesting. So now we go to method or methodology, and now we can do the same thing. We can kind of just scan through here really quickly. Convenience sample, which convenience is the lowest form of sampling. It basically means, oh, somebody was standing next to me, so I decided to use them. You really don't want to use convenience sampling. It's better to use network sampling or purposeful sampling, where you pick people based on the fact that they actually match what you're looking for. Those are very good ways of doing it. Convenience is not the best way. 32 students drawn from 2 master's programs at his university. They were 19 male, 13 female. They were computer literate, so we can see kind of who he's looking at here. And then designed the subject for both DVD and Machinisia executions of the same modeling experience. So he's doing basically an experiment here, comparing the different types of learning, but he's doing it in a qualitative way. Not entirely sure it's the best way. You can see here that data is gathered through an online questionnaire and an interview process. Online questionnaire should raise questions for you, because a questionnaire is never going to get at the depth that an interview would. So questionnaires in the qualitative research world are not considered the best way to collect data. They basically, if you're sent an email and say, hey, answer all these questions, you're going to answer the questions as short as possible. In an interview, the interviewer can actually say, hey, I'd like to know more about what you just said. Could you go into more detail? So then we see that we're going here a little bit more about how the research was done. This you can just look at, see if you see anything stands out. SurveyMonkey was used. Here's some of the statements they asked for, the questions they wanted to know. And then we keep on going down for the data collection and the data gathering. So here's what was gathered. And this is where you start to see the figure that tells you a little bit about how they structured this. And it's interesting to look at this even further. You might go back later and read it in more detail, but really the method is just for us to value the credibility of the study. They did do a pilot test, which is good. That helps to make the study a little bit more credible. Then you see the results section. I almost never actually look at the results themselves because typically they are they're going to go into a lot of detail about something that I don't really need to know, because he's going to discuss it further down here in the article. And yes, we get to the discussion, and the discussion is going to actually go over what it is that was found. Now, I tend to read this more closely and actually read every word, because I want to understand kind of what it is that they were looking at and how they figured it out. But further down, you're going to get to where they have he answers his research questions. Implications for future research. So again, this is showing you what you could possibly research in this area in the future. And this could be something that you could easily do then for your dissertation, providing you can get he's even admitting he had a small sample size, so maybe you could get a bigger sample size. However, as I'm going to say many times, qualitative research is never generalizable. So anyone that says generalizability in relation to a qualitative study, that's automatically telling you that they really don't know enough about qualitative research to understand, because qualitative research is transferable and not generalizable. And then they'll tell you the significance and then the conclusions. The conclusions, like the abstract, is a summary of what was done before. It's usually different than the abstract because it kind of focuses more on the last two sections. So you may want to read through that to make sure you understood what you saw in the article. And then you want to look at the references. The references are going to tell you who they were going to. And if you have several journal articles that you're reading, always compare the references together. See if the same author is used in multiple journal articles. If you're constantly seeing Buggy, if you're constantly seeing Buggy in all of your papers that you're reading, Buggy must be really, really, really important in the field, because he's mentioned by, or she's mentioned by, a lot of different authors. So you want to go and find that article in the library and read it. That will help you to then get a better idea of what is in the field. Okay, so that is that. If you have any questions, please email me. You're welcome to email me. Oh, and that's another thing I wanted to go over. I'm sorry. One more thing. Usually, if you find an article to be really great, but it's kind of old, so this is from 2015, you can email the author of the article to ask if there's anything newer that has come out that they know of. Sometimes they'll even send you papers that they're in the process of publishing right now. And that can help you get an idea of how this field has expanded. Researchers love to have people interested in their work and trying to connect with them. So you would just go to this university website in Ireland and you'll probably see a profile for him, and you'll be able to email him and ask him, hey, I'm really interested in this topic. Here's some of the things that I enjoyed about your paper. Is there anything else you would connect me to that I could use for my dissertation or for my paper in class? Do you know of any articles that are coming out soon, or any changes in the field that I should be aware of? And they can give you all that information. So you definitely want to tap into that in the readings that you're doing. When you find an article that's just really great, it's like really, really speaks to your topic and to your ideas. And again, if you're doing a small paper for class where you only need 4 academic articles, you may not want to do that. But when you're doing your dissertation and you need 100 articles, you're probably going to want to reach out to a few of these authors just to find out more. Okay, that's that. And again, like I said, please let me know if you have any questions. Have a great time.